our best leaders are staying. That's exactly what we want. So we've made changes to change the environment. The renaming of the department to the War Department is not just a name. In fact, it's restoring it to the original name of the department set by George Washington. But it's an ethos as well. That warrior ethos lives inside the heart of each one of these men and women, and we're unleashing it. I'm proud of the, I mean, you name it, the border, the missions, yes, those are all incredible demonstrations of that, but it's the people and the urgency of Americans to want to be a part of it that is the best affirmation, Senator.
Thank you. So we've talked about the importance of not relying on Chinese drugs for our military. Can you just talk about what what you're doing to make sure that we don't continue to rely on China for anything, including our drugs?
Oh, drugs.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We can't be dependent on China on anything that's critical to our supply chain, even if it's the national industrial base and not just the defense industrial base. And you've been a leader on that. This committee's been a leader on that. Onshoring, bringing manufacturing here, bringing critical capabilities here is central to the interagency and the NSC, but also our department. If any critical weapon system is reliant upon something China could change at a moment's notice, then we have a true challenge to our ability to produce for the American people. And so we're finding all of those, changing them, onshoring it, reviving the defense industrial base allows us to ensure we're separated from China on anything that's critical.
Thank you. Can you talk about the importance of foreign military sales to our allies and our partners, and what you're doing to make sure that whether it's what you're doing right now in Iran or any potential conflict in Asia, our partners have the best assets to be able to be a great partner?
Absolutely. Foreign military sales has been a huge problem for a long time because the department didn't prioritize it and organize to deliver efficiently on it. So we're working with the State Department. We've changed the way we do business internally. The executive order, the America First Arms Strategy, prioritizes what we sell and to whom, a catalog approach. But it took us, this committee would be astonished to know how long it took us just to get our arms around who we're selling to what and by what processes, which means there was no strategy behind ensuring we're sending the proper demand signal to industry and delivering those systems on time and under budget to those countries, which you can imagine is frustrating to partners who are relying on those to be able to step up and burden share. So foreign military sales is critical to our own defense industrial base. More customers for our companies that employ more American workers to ensure our allies are properly armed for the fights and they can stand alongside us. So FMS is a big one for us, Senator.
General Kane, I just want to commend you and everybody in the military for what you did in Venezuela and then what you've done in Iran. The willingness of the American military to fight and win, do you think it's changed the calculus for Beijing and Moscow?
Well, Senator, I know they're watching, and I'm incredibly proud of the joint force and their ability to integrate and synchronize a range of activities. And I suspect that my counterpart in China is watching very closely and envious of what our joint force is capable of doing if ordered to do so. All
right. Well, thank each of you, and thank everybody that serves under you.
Thank you, Senator Scott. Senator Kane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Hurst, I want you to just confirm something for me about the president's submitted budget. $1.5 trillion is about a 40+% increase from FY26. Am I right that not a penny of that is to go to a pay raise for the 800,000 civilians who work for the Department of Defense?
We have 4.2% of a civilian salary set aside for bonuses to make sure we can recognize high performers in the civilian workforce.
But you have guaranteed pay raises for the active duty and the Guard and Reserve component, but no guaranteed raises for
There are
civilians.
guaranteed raises for the military, but in the last year, this department's given out more civilian bonuses.
Well, if we're going to increase the defense budget by that much, I would hope the committee would take a look at this. Chairman Kane, man, I like the sound of that, Chairman Kane. General Kane, I want to ask you a question about Southern Spear. It's an operational question. I know from your background that you carefully act to keep military actions within the rules of war. What legal justification could there possibly be that would allow the U.S. military to strike boats in international waters and kill the occupants of those boats without a showing of evidence that there's narcotics on those boats?
Well, sir, as you know, our job is to show the range of options, the associated risks, and then take those execution orders, transmit them down to the COCOMs on legally appropriate and legally backstopped actions.
Could you give me a legal justification?
Well, sir, the execution order, I don't have
striking boats that do not have evidence that they're carrying narcotics?
I apologize, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I don't have a copy of the order issued to Southcom with me today. It's classified in its own right, which clearly articulates, based on a variety of criteria, what constitutes a valid military and legally valid target in that theater. And I know, I just want to say, I know and trust that our commanders at Echelon are rigorously following that legal opinion and those legal boundaries upon which we've been issued those orders.
And General Kane, I would encourage, again, my colleagues, I am at a disadvantage. I've seen the legal opinion, but I can't talk about it because it's classified. I've seen the targeting criteria, but I can't talk about them because they're classified. I've seen the secret list of DTOs against whom we have declared war that even they haven't been informed of, but I can't talk about it because it's classified. But I would urge all of my colleagues to go to the SCIF and read the targeting criteria and get briefed about it, and then also look at all of the files of all the strikes that have taken place. I've done that with the first 46 strikes or so. And I think there's a profound mismatch between what is occurring and the underlying assumptions in the legal opinion. And I would just encourage my colleagues to dig into this. To Secretary Hegseth and General Kane, the War Powers Resolution specifies that a war initiated by a president without congressional approval must be concluded within 60 days. It can be extended by an additional 30 days if, quote, the president determines and certifies to Congress in writing that unavoidable military necessity respecting the safety of the U.S. Armed Forces requires the continued use of such armed forces in the course of bringing about a prompt removal of such forces. We're right at the 60-day deadline. Is the president intending to either seek congressional authorization for the war in Iran or send us the legally required certification that he needs an additional 30 days to remove U.S. forces from the war?
Just briefly on the previous question, we do know that these are designated terrorist organizations, so we treat them like the Al-Qaeda of our hemisphere, just as a note.
But that was not the question I asked.
I know there's more to that question. I just think it's important for the public to understand that. There's no willy-nilly targeting of drug boats. We know exactly who these people are affiliated with.
I was asking about what's on the boats.
On Iran, ultimately, I would defer to the White House and White House counsel on that. However, we are in a ceasefire right now, which our understanding means the 60-day clock pauses or stops in a ceasefire. You're not in. Yeah. It's our understanding, just so you know.
Okay, well, I do not believe the statute would support that. I think the 60 days runs maybe tomorrow, and it's going to pose a really important legal question for the administration. We have serious constitutional concerns, and we don't want to layer those with additional statutory concerns. I yield back, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Senator Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, gentlemen, for your testimony. Mr. Secretary, I mentioned in the classified hearing today, but I do think the $1.5 trillion top line is historic. It meets the needs. And the other thing, as I mentioned in our earlier meeting, the president's done a really good job of getting other allies, NATO and Asian allies, to step up, meet a 5% GDP of defense spending, and in many ways, that's what this is doing as well. So isn't that important as well in terms of our global leadership, what you and the president are providing? Is that example as well?
I think the more we step up, the more the world should look at the American leadership and example and step up as well.
And they're going to do that. It helps.
It remains to be seen whether some of our allies actually step up to their commitments, but that is the hope.
Let me go to an element of that budget that I mentioned in the classified hearing. I always like to put this chart up in different hearings. We have the examples. So a lot of our adversaries, the Chinese, the Russians, in my AOR in the Arctic and the North Pacific, these are the numbers just recently: ADIZ incursions, EEZ incursions, by the Russians, by the Chinese, By the way, the green ones are joint Russian-Chinese strategic bomber task forces, joint Russian-Chinese naval task forces. This is America, right? This is a really important part of our national defense. So I was pleased to see that one of the elements in the budget was what's referred to by the Air Force as the JBER fighter town recapitalization, given how strategically important that Air Force base is. General, can you talk a little bit about that recapitalization? It's for building out what is a very strategic base, but old. A lot of these facilities are from the 1950s. The goal in the Air Force's language was to have a recapitalization to provide a new state-of-the-art fighter facility capable of supporting multiple platforms now and well into the future. $6.9 billion total authorization, $2.2 billion approps for this year. Can you talk about the importance? I was glad to host you at JBER recently. Can you talk about the importance of this element of the president's budget?
Yes, Senator. Thank you for that. And you know, our investment up at JBER is essential to modernizing the nation's ability to project power and capabilities.